Before you is not a heroic saga of great battles, not a romantic chronicle of knightly exploits, and not an inspiring parable about fate and glory. This is a detailed, grim, and absurdly ironic journey of one king toward the most mundane and most terrifying truth of the Middle Ages, death by illness. There will be no beautiful farewell speeches here, no wise advice to heirs, and no exalted spiritual triumph. But before you settle in, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I'm genuinely curious to see who's joined us. Now get comfortable. We're beginning. You are born in the year 1245, and although no one asks your opinion, you are instantly the center of attention. Your first memory, if you could have one, would be the feel of rough linen and the scratch of a damp cloth as the midwife fusses over you, making sure you appear sufficiently regal for the first of what will be an endless stream of visitors. You are not merely a baby, you are the prince. You are swaddled not only in layers of cloth, but also in expectations so heavy that even a grown man would find it hard to breathe. The room is stuffy, the air thick with the scent of incense and bodies that have not known a proper bath in weeks. Outside, the wind howls across the castle walls, but inside, everyone is watching to see if you, the infant, will cry with sufficient vigor to prove you are fit for the throne. Your father is King Louis IX, called the Saint, although you are too young to understand what sainthood actually involves, apart from long prayers and an alarming number of public processions. Your mother is Margaret of Provence, and you are her second son, but fortune is fickle, and so you, little Philippe, become the primary heir after your elder brother's death in infancy. No one tells you about this unfortunate predecessor, nor about the high probability of mortality that stalks every medieval nursery. You are a child of privilege, but privilege in the 13th century is a relative term. Your crib is finely carved, but your mattress is filled with straw that smells faintly of last autumn's harvest. From your earliest days, your every sneeze, hiccup, and bowel movement is a matter of political importance. The nursemaids whisper behind thick tapestries about whether your complexion is a sign of divine favor or a harbinger of yet another royal tragedy. Every cough brings an audience of physicians, priests, and superstitious old women, each clutching their own collection of dried herbs, mysterious relics, and dangerous advice. You do not get to be an ordinary child. You are always on display. Your cries echo in stone corridors, drawing anxious courtiers who believe your survival is not just your business, but the business of an entire kingdom. As the days pass, you grow stronger, or at least you manage to survive, which is what passes for strength in your world. No one explains to you that you are lucky to have avoided the worst of the fevers that sweep through castles, like the wind sweeps through open gates. No one tells you that the very act of living past your first year is a triumph in an age where infant mortality is the rule, not the exception. There is no time for sentimentality. Your parents visit you between councils, crusades, and confessions, gazing at you with a mixture of pride, hope, and the unspoken fear that you too might be lost to the shadowy figure lurking at the edge of every medieval nursery, death itself. Your nurse, who is as likely to be a noblewoman as a peasant, lineage matters less than the strength of her arms and the health of her milk, holds you tightly, muttering prayers under her breath for your protection. She tells you stories of saints and miracles, as if these alone will be enough to shield you from the unseen germs, viruses, and curses that conspire in the night air. Sometimes she sings, her voice hoarse from cold stone chambers, and you drift to sleep to the lullaby of a world where survival is an act of rebellion. No one asks you if you wish to be king. No one explains that being born in a royal bed comes with more risks than rewards, that you are as much a hostage to fortune as a master of destiny. Your tiny hands clutch at embroidered blankets, but you do not know that one day you will clutch at your own chest, breathless and sweating, as the slow poison of medieval illness claims you. For now, you are just a child, blinking up at the flickering candlelight, ignorant of the path that has been laid out for you. Outside your window, the seasons turn in an endless cycle of mud, frost, and rain. The castle walls are thick, but not thick enough to keep out the chill or the rumors of distant wars, famines, and plagues. Every visitor to your chamber bows, not to you, but to the future you represent, a future that is as fragile as your heartbeat. As you grow, so does the sense that your life is not your own. The wet nurse is replaced by tutors, priests, and ever more physicians. You learn to walk on uneven flagstones, to speak in careful tones, to trust no one entirely. Each lesson is delivered with the gentle insistence that you must survive, because survival is, in itself, an act of governance. You do not understand why everyone seems so nervous, but you grow used to the smell of incense and the clamor of worried voices. You accept it as the price of being the heir, and thus your life begins, not with a shout of joy, but with a collective sigh of relief from a kingdom desperate for continuity. You are the hope of France, but you are also a prisoner of fate, swaddled in golden linens and the dark certainty that in the end, no one escapes the story that begins with birth and ends, inevitably, in the shadowed silence of death. Childhood in your royal world is, in theory, a thing of splendor. You live in a castle, yes, and wear silks, and there is always a loaf of coarse bread to gnaw. But let us not romanticize. The smell of your world is closer to a stable than a palace, and hygiene, that great invention of distant centuries, is more rumor than reality. You, the heir to a kingdom, are lucky to be scrubbed clean a few times each year, fewer times, in fact, than your father's battle horses receive a good lathering. Water, you are told early on, is dangerous. Bathing is viewed with deep suspicion. Everyone knows the story of the nobleman who caught his death of cold after an ill-advised dunk in the river. Physicians mutter that warm water opens the pores to the miasmas floating invisibly on the air, waiting to crawl into your flesh and kill you. So you are cleaned by other means, mostly linen cloths rubbed over your limbs, and a ritual sprinkling of rose water, or, if times are lean, plain old rainwater fetched from the gutters. You develop a crust, literally and metaphorically. Your skin grows accustomed to layers of grime, dust from the rushes on the floor, ash from the great fires, and the faint stickiness of spilled wine become a kind of second garment. Your hair is combed, yes, but with a wooden comb that tugs out more scalp than tangles. If lice appear, as they inevitably do, there is a flurry of activity: perfumed powders, special oils, whispered prayers. There is always a sense of battle, of losing ground, to the great unseen armies of the insect world. Your childhood is not a private thing. You are watched constantly, trailed by nursemaids and tutors, by priests who are paid to note your smallest sin. The privacy of a modern age, where a child might close a door and sulk, is unknown to you. Your door is always open. Your chamber is always full of people, talking, advising, judging. At night, you hear the shuffle of feet in the corridors, the muttered complaints of servants as they argue over whose turn it is to clean up after you. They rarely mean the chamber pot. Your diet is rich in ways you will not appreciate until you are much older and suffering from the gout that afflicts all men of your line. Meat, especially tough cuts from tired cattle and greasy chunks of mutton, is roasted on spits and served with sauces designed to disguise the taste of old age. Bread is coarse, flecked with grit from the millstones. Fruit, when you have it, is more risk than pleasure. The worms come free of charge. The greatest risk is always water. You are warned not to drink it straight, but even watered wine does not always save you from the mysterious fevers that sweep the nurseries of Europe. Illness is not an exception, it is an expectation. You grow up surrounded by the sick, children with pox, with hacking coughs, with sunken eyes. Each morning brings news that another child you half remembered from yesterday's lessons is gone. They are replaced without ceremony. Life must go on, and grief is considered impractical. You learn early not to ask questions. The rhythms of your day are as fixed as the positions of the stars. Lessons in Latin and the art of war, prayers before and after each meal, instructions on how to sit, how to kneel, how to address your elders, how to suppress your laughter. Joy is permitted only if it is not too loud. You ride ponies that are as ill-tempered as your tutors and watch the falcons tear at their prey with a fascination that makes your nurses nervous. If you trip and fall, you are expected to do so with dignity. Tears are discouraged. Pain is a teacher. There are moments of wonder, yes. Sometimes you sneak a glance at a tapestry or a painted manuscript and imagine another world, a place where boys are allowed to run and roll in the mud. Sometimes, after a storm, the garden sparkles with water droplets, and for a moment you consider plunging your hands into the earth just to see what it feels like. But you know better. The dirt is for the peasants, and you are not a peasant, even if you are often as dirty as one. Sometimes there are festivals. The court fills with strange faces and musicians, and the smell of roasting meats almost overcomes the scent of damp rushes and sweat. You are dressed in your finest clothes, which itch intolerably, and paraded in front of ambassadors as if you were a rare breed of livestock. You learn to smile and bow, to recite lines of poetry you barely understand. The adults are careful not to let you out of their sight. You are too valuable to risk to a crowd or a careless stumble down the stairs. At night, you listen to stories told in the low, droning voice of your wet nurse. They are always about saints and monsters, miracles and death. You fall asleep not to dreams of adventure, but to the muffled sobs of servants who have seen too many children die, to the scrape of rats behind the walls, and to the certainty that you are always being watched. Your childhood is not tragic, it is simply normal. This is the way things are, and you accept them because there is no other way. You become an expert in discomfort, in boredom, in silence. You learn that washing is a privilege reserved for special occasions, like coronations or funerals. You hope, if you ever have a choice, to choose the former. But choices are rare, and so you grow older, layer upon layer, as the grime accumulates and the rules settle around you like a second skin. No one ever asks you if you are happy. Happiness, after all, is a concept for another age. For now, you are alive, and that, in your world, is more than enough. It will soon become apparent to you, perhaps it already has, when you are old enough to listen at doors and overhear whispers, that medieval medicine is a game of chance, and the odds are rarely in your favor. From your first fever to your inevitable royal demise, you are surrounded by a retinue of doctors, herbalists, alchemists, and soothsayers, each of whom is convinced that the key to health lies in a mysterious concoction, a ritual gesture, or simply an optimistic prayer. You, the royal patient, are less a person than a canvas for experimentation. You may have imagined at first that being born into royalty would entitle you to the best possible care. In a sense, you are correct. You are attended by the most expensive incompetents available in 13th century France. When you cough, three doctors arrive, one with a leech pot, one with a silver cup of suspicious greenish syrup, and one who believes that your stars are out of alignment and recommends a journey to the cathedral to procure a fragment of a saint's finger bone. No one, absolutely no one, washes their hands. The theory of health is elegant in its hopelessness. The body, your physicians assure you, is a delicate balance of four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. To be healthy, these must be perfectly equal, although no one has ever seen this state except in the pages of a Greek manuscript. Too much blood, they cut you open. Too little, you are given red wine. Mucus in your throat, take a cold compress, then a hot compress, then chew on a boiled root and hope you do not choke. No one, absolutely no one, questions the system. You are prescribed herbal remedies by the cartload. There are roots to be boiled, leaves to be pounded, seeds to be steeped in wine or vinegar or honey. The more revolting the taste, the more effective the medicine is supposed to be. You learn to swallow potions that would give a goat pause, wormwood for fevers, fennel for cough, and something called dragon's blood, which is neither dragon nor blood, but the resin of a tree your doctor cannot identify on a map. Sometimes you wonder if your doctors invent their recipes just to see if you will drink them. Should you come down with a rash, a priest might be called. The line between physician and exorcist is porous. He mumbles Latin, sprinkles you with holy water, and instructs the servants to hang a particular saint's relic above your bed. The relic, you notice, looks suspiciously like a chicken bone wrapped in linen, but you are careful not to say so aloud. Your mother, Margaret, is not above consulting folk healers. Disguised in her thickest veil, she invites old women from the village to the castle kitchens, where they offer charms made of knotted string, whispered incantations, and the occasional live frog, which must be buried at a crossroads at midnight to cure your headache. You lie awake, listening to the procession of remedies as they file through your chamber, and you realize that, in the medieval world, belief is half the medicine. Of course, your education is not neglected. You are expected to learn not just Latin and sword play, but also the names of every herb and every saintly bone in your father's apothecary. You practice distinguishing the scent of rosemary from rue, and you are taught how to make a poultice, though your servants, if they are wise, never actually let you near the kitchen fire. For all the devotion to science, your body is a mystery to its caretakers. Your physicians diagnose you from across the room, rarely daring to touch you unless it is to pinch your cheek and declare that your spleen is overactive. One physician insists on reading your urine by candlelight, proclaiming that the color reveals the future, which makes you wonder if you ought to eat more beets simply to confuse him. There is, throughout your childhood, a constant parade of suffering, attended by a chorus of ineptitude. One day you awake with a fever. By noon you have been purged, bled, anointed with oils, and subjected to an hour of chanting by the bishop. At dusk you are alive, not because of your doctors, but in spite of them. Your father's reputation as a saint adds an extra burden. Every time you sneeze, someone wonders aloud if this is divine punishment for the sins of France. Confessors hover like vultures, eager to absolve you of whatever offense has earned you this toothache, this rash, this unexplained shortness of breath. You develop a talent for listing your sins in reverse order of plausibility, just to see if anyone is listening. Meanwhile, your friends, those who have not already died of the latest fever, compare scars and laugh about whose treatment was the worst. I had 6 leeches, one brags. They tried to make me eat boiled horse dung, boasts another. You nod, solemn, and try to one-up them by describing the time a monk tried to balance your humors by making you eat burnt bread soaked in vinegar. Occasionally, someone recovers. Everyone claims it is the latest potion or prayer that did the trick. No one admits that sometimes people simply get better, or that, more often, they do not. But you persist. You swallow your medicines, endure your bleedings, and allow your horoscope to be recalculated every time Mars moves retrograde. You grow up learning that illness is inevitable and that surviving it is either a miracle or a clerical error. The doctors congratulate themselves, the priests thank God, your mother sends a little extra coin to the village women. No one thanks you for your part in the ordeal, but that, you suppose, is only fair. You have survived another year. You are, by definition, the healthiest prince in France. And if you sometimes wake in the night, dizzy from a new prescription, you can always comfort yourself. At least you were not born a peasant. Their doctors are even worse. You are a royal child, soon a royal man, and if you listen to minstrels and court poets, you might believe your table groans with the weight of splendor. It does, but the splendor is not without peril. In fact, if you were to list the most common causes of death for someone of your rank, eating dinner would come somewhere between catching a fever and falling from a horse. Every meal is a festival, but it is also a wager against fate, mold, and the mysterious agency of bad airs. The centerpiece of your daily life is the grand feast. Even on an ordinary day, dozens of dishes parade before you, trenchers of beef, pies stuffed with doves and quail, glazed swans, porridge bubbling with raisins and nuts, slabs of bread so dense with bran and millstone grit that your teeth ache. The meat arrives roasted, boiled, or preserved. You are told it is fresh, though the word fresh has a certain elasticity in a world without reliable cold storage. If the venison has spent several days on the road, that is simply a mark of its noble origin. If you wish for fish, it is soaked in brine or vinegar and then reconstituted in wine or ale. Sometimes it tastes suspiciously of the barrels in which it traveled. Sometimes it tastes of nothing at all. There are eels in thick black sauces, carp fried in pork fat, dried herring so salty it puckers your mouth for hours. Fridays, as a rule, are the most penitential, an endless parade of pike, tench, and lamprey, all delivered with the solemnity of a funeral and the flavor of wet rope. Every course is a guessing game. Is the chicken undercooked or merely a shade you have never seen before? Are the mushrooms safe or will they send you to the privy for a week? Is the cream actually cream or has it begun its transformation into something less wholesome? Even the bread, staple of the highborn, hides its hazards. If the baker's millstones were poorly cleaned, you will soon know it by the sound of your own teeth cracking. There are vegetables, of course, though you are encouraged to eat them sparingly. Physicians warn that raw fruit and green things excite the humors. Cabbage is boiled to oblivion. Carrots are more often animal fodder than food, and garlic is medicine, not cuisine. Peasants may live on pottage and onions, but for you, vegetables are a sign that meat was unavailable, or worse, forbidden by the calendar. All food, no matter how carefully prepared, is a race against time and temperature. The kitchens of your father's castles are warm, smoky, and filled with flies. Salt is liberally applied, as is vinegar, wine, and anything else that might preserve a dish for one more day. A talented cook can mask almost any off flavor. A creative one can transform spoiled meat into a pie with enough spice and pastry to fool even the most discerning guest. You develop a palate for interesting tastes, a little tang, a whiff of fermentation, a sharpness that is neither entirely pleasant nor wholly unrecognizable. Feasts, when they come, are even more treacherous. The cooks work for days, hacking and roasting, stuffing and skewering, while dogs and servants hover at the edges, waiting for scraps. Great platters are piled high, and you are expected to sample everything, lest you insult a cook, a guest, or a minor deity. Food is art, food is politics, food is obligation. You learn to pace yourself, to take small bites, to exchange meaningful glances with your siblings when something tastes especially suspicious. No one wishes to be the first to keel over from a bad oyster, but no one wants to be accused of cowardice either. Wine is always flowing, and you drink copiously, not from thirst, but because wine is considered safer than water. The well is unreliable, the river is a conduit for disease, and water is for washing, if it is used at all. Wine, watered down for breakfast and strong for dinner, is your constant companion. It does not kill the germs, but it dulls the senses enough that you do not mind. Inevitably, the dangers reveal themselves. Stomachs rumble in the night, and the castle resounds with retching. The privies overflow, and the air grows thick with apologies and the aroma of defeat. A physician is summoned, and he assures everyone that the problem was not the spoiled fish, but rather the alignment of Venus. You are purged, bled, and perhaps given a spoonful of honey mixed with ash. The cook, if he is unlucky, is sent to the dungeons. The rest of the court, wisely, pretends it was all a coincidence. Your personal risk is magnified by your position. Any food, any drink could in theory be poisoned, not just by nature, but by design. The taster, a stoic and increasingly nervous individual, becomes your shadow. You watch him for signs, a sudden pallor, a quiet moan, a discreet dash for the door. If he survives, you eat. If he does not, you have learned something valuable, though at considerable cost. But there is no escaping food. You are required to eat, to display your appetite as proof of health and vigor. Every morsel is both sustenance and a performance. The chroniclers will write that your table was splendid, that you dined with kings and knights and troubadours. They will not record the aftermath, the days spent in bed with cold sweats, the whispered prayers for deliverance from the invisible enemies lurking in every bite. In time, you develop a kind of fatalism. You eat what is served, thank God for every meal, and hope that if death comes, it does so quietly, without too much embarrassment. You are a prince, after all, and must die with dignity, even if the cause is a suspiciously soft piece of cheese. As you inch closer to adulthood, the patterns of your days shift, but one reality remains ever present and entirely unromantic. Death is not a distant shadow, but a constant, looming house guest. There is no corner of the royal court, no hour of the day, not even a solitary ride through the forest, when you do not sense its heavy, silent observation. You start to understand that surviving childhood in the 13th century is no more than the first round of a lifelong tournament against the odds, and the stakes only increase. You are old enough now to attend your father's councils, to ride at his side in processions, and to listen, when allowed, to the somber talk of treaties and war. All of these are lessons in mortality. Courtiers arrive, looking older each year, and depart for their estates, never to return. Sometimes they die of wounds. More often, they simply disappear, their names replaced by others on the ever updating guest list of the living. Even your tutors, so ageless when you were small, are revealed to be fragile men, susceptible to apoplexy, fever, or simply vanishing without explanation. One day their chair is empty, and no one mentions them again. In the halls, tapestries and painted shields mark the faces and deeds of ancestors, most of whom died young. You are taught to recite the glories of their lives, but no one lingers on the particular, usually unspectacular, ways they met their end. Your family tree is a work in progress, its lower branches often snapped off by fate before they could grow thick enough to bear the weight of memory. The sense that life is short, brutally, unpredictably short, is a lesson you internalize as easily as your catechism. When you are very young, you mourn the lost with the extravagant despair of a child. By your teens, you grow accustomed to the cycle of arrivals and departures, betrothals and funerals, alliances sealed by marriages and then broken by disease. It becomes almost mathematical. You find yourself tallying up your friends' and cousins' lifespans. 7 years, 9, 11, and for those few who reach your age, almost a miracle, there is the shared, unspoken knowledge that this year might be their last. Sometimes you imagine a world where you could grow up without keeping a mental inventory of who coughed last at the feast, or which servant vanished after the latest fever swept through the servants' quarters. Instead, you grow skilled at recognizing symptoms, the flush of a fever, the rattle in the chest, the peculiar glassiness in the eyes that signals someone will not see the next full moon. You learn to keep your distance, though etiquette demands otherwise. You are not supposed to be afraid, but you are not supposed to be dead either. You witness death at every level of the social order. Nobles expire in their beds, priests slip away in the middle of vespers, and children, always children, vanish into the great silence of the graveyard. In the countryside, the peasants die by the dozen from hunger or cold, though these tragedies rarely rate more than a passing mention at court. You begin to understand that death is not always dramatic. Often, it is dull, a cough that lingers too long, a sore that will not heal, a sudden, inexplicable collapse during a hunt, or a dance. Occasionally, you see death come in spectacle, a fall from a horse, a duel gone wrong, the grotesque pageantry of an execution. These are public, noisy ends, with an audience and the illusion of meaning. But you know these are exceptions, not the rule. Most deaths are private, invisible, quiet. A closing door, a muffled cry, the priest's hurried words, and then a new body to be carried out under the cover of darkness. You begin to notice how adults try to shield children from the worst, and yet, paradoxically, the children are often the ones who know the most. After all, they are the ones most likely to vanish. You overhear conversations, low, urgent, sometimes almost resigned. He is not expected to last the week. She has the look of death about her. The best you can do is pray. You learn to recognize the rituals, the whispered prayers, the frantic search for relics, the processions of priests and physicians who always arrive just a little too late. And so you adapt. You learn not to grow too attached, not to expect too much, not to make promises about the future. You develop a peculiar gallows humor with the other children of the court. You joke about who will fall ill next, who will succumb to the next epidemic, who will survive the latest royal dinner. You laugh because if you did not, you would surely weep. Still, even in this somber reality, there is the small, persistent hope of outlasting the odds. Every morning you wake, you are keenly aware of the privilege, even if it is only temporary. You resolve to keep living, to keep learning, to keep moving forward, if only out of stubbornness. Life is precious precisely because it is so precarious. The fear of death sharpens the taste of every meal, the sound of every song, the warmth of every fire. And so you grow up. You become both fatalistic and strangely optimistic because there is nothing else to be. You recite your prayers and take your medicines and nod politely to every physician, priest, and charlatan who claims to have the secret to long life. You watch your elders and peers alike slip quietly away, and you realize this is not tragedy, but simply the way of things. In the world you inherit, the only certainty is that death is never far away, and it will never, ever be polite enough to knock. If you imagined your body was your own, you were mistaken. In the palace, every cough, yawn, pallor, or flush becomes the day's topic, the centerpiece of a living tapestry woven with whispers. Your health is a national concern, more so perhaps than the next war or famine. It is a living rumor, passed from noble to noble, kitchen maid to chaplain, each adding a little seasoning as they go. You sneeze at dinner. By morning, the scullery maid is telling the stable master that the prince is dying. The stable master tells the armorer that the prince has inherited his mother's weak lungs, and the armorer tells the chamberlain it is surely a wasting disease, the same that carried off two cousins last winter. By the time you reach the council chamber, your demise has been established as fact, and the only debate is over the likely date and manner of your departure. Your every movement is observed, interpreted, and reinterpreted by a rotating cast of physicians, courtiers, and assorted well wishers. Do you walk with a slight limp after falling on the courtyard stones? Perhaps you are developing a problem with your humors, or worse, suffering the early signs of gout. Is your appetite a little less robust after a questionable fish stew? Someone is bound to remember a prophecy about princes and indigestion. You are examined, prodded, pinched, and sniffed by doctors who do not so much practice medicine as rehearse it on your royal person. They nod wisely, purse their lips, and suggest ever more dramatic cures. You notice that the more confused they are, the more elaborate their prescriptions become. Leechings, plasters, hot stones on your belly, fumigations with herbs whose names you cannot pronounce. Each remedy becomes a story told over supper by the lower servants, who speculate whether you will emerge stronger or finally be done in by your own medical team. It would almost be amusing if the consequences were not so real. The mood of the palace shifts with your health. If you wake pale or sluggish, the cooks are ordered to prepare new broths. The priests add extra prayers to the daily round, and your father's face grows pinched and worried. If you laugh and eat heartily, the court relaxes, feasts grow more extravagant, and the tapestry of rumor briefly, mercifully unwinds. Your mother becomes a careful observer of your habits. She keeps a ledger, if not on parchment, then in her mind, of every sign and symptom. You can sense her watching you as you play chess, as you read, as you ride in the courtyard. If you wince, she notes it. If you stifle a yawn, she summons the physician. Your well being is her mission, and her worry, in turn, becomes contagious. There are days you want nothing more than to escape this relentless scrutiny. You crave privacy, not just from the constant presence of your tutors and attendants, but from the suffocating concern of everyone in your orbit. But you are a prince. Your life is not your own, and your health, such as it is, belongs to the entire kingdom. You are an insurance policy, a living guarantee that the line will continue, a symbol of order in a world that fears chaos. Sometimes you experiment. You pretend to limp a little more, to rub your temples, just to see what will happen. The effect is immediate. Whispered conversations multiply. The chief physician is called from his bed at dawn. Special meals are prepared. An amulet is hung over your bed, just in case. You cannot decide whether to feel guilty, annoyed, or simply entertained by the predictable absurdity of it all. Every so often, a rumor escapes the castle and finds its way to the towns and villages. You become the subject of gossip at markets and in taverns. Farmers discuss whether your health is a sign from God. Bakers add an extra loaf to their prayers, just in case. Merchants speculate on whether a sickly prince will mean higher taxes or lower trade. You are both absent and omnipresent, your unseen body, a character in stories told far from the royal hearth. Your rivals, meanwhile, are not idle. A weak air invites speculation, schemes, and opportunists. You learn early to smile through your fevers, to walk a little taller when your knees ache, to speak firmly even when you would rather be in bed. You become adept at hiding symptoms, at deflecting concern with a joke or a sharp word. Still, the court's collective attention never really fades. Your health is its most precious resource, and it will guard, dissect, and fret over it, whether you like it or not. But the truth is, you are not as sturdy as the stories demand. You have aches, you have chills, you wake sometimes drenched in sweat, your heart pounding from nightmares you will never share. You are both more fragile and more resilient than anyone understands. You learn to live within the paradox, too valuable to be left alone, too exposed to ever be fully safe. If you live long enough, you discover that the greatest constant in your life is not faith or fortune, but the endless, churning rumor of your own health, a rumor that will only cease when one day it finally comes true. Theoretically, your days should be consumed by lessons on statecraft, dynastic alliances, and the subtle arts of diplomacy and war. You should be absorbing the wisdom of centuries, reading treaties, learning about trade, practicing the royal signature. Instead, the main syllabus of your adolescence is written by fever charts and the endless improvisational performance of keeping you alive. Your tutors attempt to teach you the affairs of France, which fief is at odds with which, who is plotting where the silver comes from, and why all the good horses seem to vanish in winter. Yet the rhythm of your education is constantly interrupted by a cough, a shiver, a rash, or a mysterious ache that throws the entire palace into uproar. Lessons on the Carolingians are postponed, so your pulse can be examined by a physician with hands as cold as a fish. The French code of law waits while a collection of anxious adults debates whether your headache is caused by bad air or the evil eye. The world of politics is out there, complex, shifting, and vital. But inside the palace, your world is illness, symptoms, and speculation. As a result, you become an unwilling expert in the art of diagnosis. You know the difference between the sharp pain of a stone in the kidney and the slow burn of a rising fever. You can recite the names of every saint invoked for colds, for the pox, for mysterious cramps, and for the sweats. You know which prayers are supposed to cure which ailment, and you become adept at the ritual of touching relics and crossing yourself at the right moments. Your Latin may be shaky when it comes to legal documents, but you know the medical jargon: apoplexy, ague, dropsy, flux. The faces of physicians become more familiar than those of your counselors. You know them by name, by the shape of their beards, by their favored remedies. Dr. Bertrand always prescribes hot wine mixed with egg yolk. Master Renaud is fond of compresses and has an unhealthy fascination with bezoar stones, those mysterious lumps found in the stomachs of goats. Old Brother Martin is slow to speak, slow to act, and always quick with a story about someone who was cured of the plague by an onion poultice and the right prayer. They teach you to fear symptoms, but to distrust the cure. Some remedies sound plausible, others are pure theater. When your stomach churns, you are given crushed pearls and milk or powders scraped from ancient bones. Sometimes you are told to rub a toad on your chest or to hang dried fox testicles over your bed to ward off evil spirits. You endure all of it because not enduring is not an option. The only real choice you are allowed is whether to grimace or smile through it. Meanwhile, politics, the game for which you were born, is the lesson always waiting for you, always rescheduled. You are supposed to learn how to write decrees, how to judge disputes, how to spot a lie in the words of a Gascon lord. But the lesson is constantly postponed, always after the prince feels better. Even when you are well enough to sit in council, your mind wanders to the hidden cough of the scribe in the corner, the red rimmed eyes of the ambassador, the faint but unmistakable scent of sickness on the air. You become aware of a deep irony. In a palace full of power, the most powerful force is invisible and random. You see grown men, your elders, your teachers, your models, reduced to helplessness by a single fever. You see strong knights go pale and vanish from the hall, never to be mentioned again except in hurried prayers for the dead. The highborn and the low alike are brought to heel by the same unseeable hand. The greatest diplomat can be laid low by a spoiled meat pie or a chill caught in a drafty corridor. Your world, in the end, is a lesson in humility. You understand the limits of authority, the power of the unseen, the utter indifference of illness to rank or talent. When you are well, you study treaties and lineage. You practice your signature. You listen to the endless disputes of barons and bishops. But your real curriculum is the roll call of plagues and fevers, the etiquette of suffering, the protocols of survival. You can quote passages from Hippocrates more easily than the laws of Paris. You can describe the symptoms of St. Anthony's fire, the ways to tell a fever from a chill, the most effective way to charm a boil away with a whispered rhyme. Your friends, those who survive, swap tips not on diplomacy, but on which ointment stings the least, which leech leaves the smallest scar, which priest's prayers seem to get results. When on rare occasions you are summoned to discuss matters of state, you find that everyone in the room shares your expertise. The fate of a fief can wait until someone figures out whether the marquise's rash is catching. Negotiations pause for sneezing fits and complaints about aching joints. The real power, you realize, is held by the one who controls the medicine chest, or the rumor of a miracle cure. In the palace, disease is a constant tutor, its lessons sharper and more memorable than anything in your royal curriculum. It teaches you not just about the body, but about the fragility of every plan, every alliance, every future. Politics, you understand, is simply the art of surviving long enough to matter. And so you endure, learning more than you ever wished about the precise number of boils a man can survive, the correct way to bleed a fever, and which flavor of relic tastes least like disappointment. The rest, the treaties, the alliances, the signatures, can wait. Sickness does not. There are days, long stretches of days even, when you almost forget the constant threat. You take pleasure in small things. A tolerable meal, a clear morning, a rare moment of laughter unshadowed by dread. You feel, in those rare intervals, almost robust. almost safe. Then, as always, it arrives. An ordinary evening slips into an uneasy night, and your body betrays you. It is always sudden, never ceremonial. One day you are walking in the garden, listening to your tutor's droning Latin, admiring how the light falls on the ramparts. The next, you feel it, the prickle of heat along your neck, the slow, creeping fatigue in your limbs. By supper, the taste of wine has turned to metal, and you cannot muster interest in even the safest dish. You make your excuses and retreat to your chamber, convinced you need only a short rest. But your body has other plans. As the candles gutter, you realize you are sweating despite the chill. Your head throbs, your bones ache. A shiver runs through you, so violent it rattles your teeth. The servants whisper outside your door, already spreading the news. He does not look well. They bring blankets, then remove them, then bring them back, as if the right number of coverings could somehow restore your balance. You know, even before the first physician arrives, that the performance has begun. The fever is a familiar, unwelcome guest. It builds with theatrical cruelty, flooding your body with heat until the very sheets scald your skin. You toss, half delirious, haunted by the figures of your childhood, tutors, courtiers, long dead cousins, all of whom seem to vanish just this way. You remember the stories of saintly kings who met their end with stoic grace. You are not a saint. You are not even particularly brave. You want only to survive the night. At some point, midnight perhaps or later, the physicians appear. They bring the whole apparatus of royal medicine, bleeding bowls, pungent poultices, mysterious vials. They debate in urgent whispers at the foot of your bed, discussing the color of your tongue, the quality of your sweat, the speed of your pulse. Someone insists on cold compresses, another demands hot bricks at your feet. You cannot distinguish their faces, only their voices, and the constant undertone of anxiety. You are not left alone, not even for a moment. Squires bring water, then wine, then bitter broths that scorch your already raw throat. Your mother sits nearby, reciting prayers, her face pinched and pale. Your father paces the hall, his shadow flickering against the stone. Everyone waits to see which way the scales will tip, recovery or decline, life or death. No one speaks of the possibility that this is the beginning of the end. That would be bad luck, and in this world, luck is as real a force as any saint's intervention. Your mind wanders in the delirium. You dream of cold streams, of running across sunlit fields, of rooms empty of watchers and whispers. You wake again and again to the pressing needs of your failing body, thirst, nausea, pain. Every sensation is magnified. The roughness of linen, the reek of medicines, the footsteps in the corridor. The air itself seems heavy, pressed down by centuries of worry. With each passing hour, the chamber grows more crowded. Priests arrive, offering last rites far too soon. Nobles and distant relatives hover, pretending concern while calculating the odds of their own advancement. The palace operates in crisis mode. Rumors leak into the city. The prince is gravely ill. The prince is dying. The prince is already dead. Merchants postpone shipments. Bishops compose hasty prayers, and the baker's wife weeps for you, though you have never tasted her bread. The doctors, faced with your stubborn fever, become desperate. You are bled, bled again, purged with vile potions, wrapped in rags soaked in vinegar. The theory is simple. If the body is in chaos, force it to order. The reality is suffering, hours spent trembling, sweating, shivering. You are too tired to protest, too weak to move. The world narrows to your aching limbs and the endless flickering candlelight. The courtiers keep vigil, but you sense their impatience. There are decisions to be made, alliances to be considered, inheritances to be arranged. Your health is not just your own concern, it is a political event, a potential crisis. The line of succession, so carefully maintained, now hangs on your next breath. As night slips into dawn, you hover in the half light, caught between fever dreams and the crushing weight of your own mortality. Sometimes, for a moment, the fever breaks. You sweat through another set of sheets, gasp in the cold air, and for an instant believe you might survive. Then the heat returns, the cycle begins anew, and you surrender once more to the quiet, relentless battle inside your flesh. This is illness, medieval style, public, protracted, absurdly dramatic, and yet deeply lonely. No one can suffer for you. No one can make a promise. The only certainty is uncertainty. A single day can change everything, and the best you can hope for is to emerge, exhausted but alive, on the other side. Your fever has now lasted long enough to warrant the full attention of the royal household. The whispers have evolved into a constant hum, and the castle halls echo with the slap of hurried footsteps. In the corridor outside your chamber, a procession of learned men gathers. They wear voluminous robes, carry pouches bulging with dried roots and mysterious powders, and speak in a mixture of Latin, Greek, and regional French that sounds impressive but means nothing to anyone except themselves. This is the Grand Council of Physicians, assembled, as always, in moments of highest uncertainty, united only by their collective ignorance. If you expected certainty, you have chosen the wrong century. If you expected privacy, you have chosen the wrong family. They crowd around your bed, and the performance begins. The chief physician, Master Guillaume, is the first to speak. He clears his throat with practiced gravitas and surveys your face as if you are a riddle wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in a royal bedsheet. He proclaims that your tongue is notably dry, which everyone murmurs is a significant observation. The second doctor, not to be outdone, insists your pulse is sluggish, yet with moments of unwarranted vigor. The third claims it is a malady of the liver. He always says this, perhaps because he once read it in a book and it sounded important. They debate the color of your urine, the heat of your breath, the precise angle at which your right eyelid droops. Each symptom is a clue, each clue a new opportunity for diagnosis, disagreement, and a further airing of rivalries that have simmered for years. Master Guillaume is partial to humoral imbalances. Dr. Bertrand, recently returned from Italy, suspects a malign vapor rising from the marshes. Brother Martin wonders aloud if this is not an excess of black bile, possibly exacerbated by a surfeit of pears. There is, of course, no shortage of theories from outside the medical fraternity. Your mother suspects witchcraft. Your father fears it is punishment for some recent diplomatic slight. The kitchen maid wonders if it was the fish, which smelled a bit odd. The confessor quietly suggests a failure of faith and recommends an immediate confession, fasting, and a donation to a local abbey. Your body becomes a battlefield. Suggestions fly like arrows. Apply leeches to the soles of your feet, recommends one. No, says another. A hot poultice of boiled nettles and goat fat is required. Someone suggests burning dried rosemary to ward off evil spirits. Another proposes placing a dried mole under your pillow. The herbalist, who has the air of someone resigned to being ignored, quietly places a sachet of lavender in the window and mutters a prayer. No one considers, for even a moment, the possibility of leaving you to rest in silence. Silence, after all, is suspicious. It implies a lack of care, a dereliction of duty. There is always something to be done, even if doing something is precisely what has kept half the nobility of France in an early grave for generations. The debate over your treatment reaches your ears in waves, like the coming and going of the tide. You are too exhausted to protest, too feverish to laugh, too accustomed to this ritual to hope for relief. Sometimes you drift into a half sleep and imagine the council arguing over a roast goose instead of your failing body. Would they disagree as vigorously about gravy? The longer the council lasts, the more elaborate the proposed cures become. At one point, Master Guillaume suggests a purge, which everyone agrees is at least better than the last time, when someone tried to rebalance a baron's humors with boiled beetles and garlic wine. Dr. Bertrand insists on a new regimen, fasting for one day, followed by a broth made from the bones of a black rooster, then another bleeding, to ensure the bad spirits have an exit. You are not asked your opinion. You are not even addressed, except as an object of speculation. The most you can do is close your eyes and hope that, whatever course of treatment is chosen, it will not involve anything too alive, too dead, or too recently retrieved from the garden compost. Outside, the court speculates with equal fervor. Some place bets on which physician's theory will prevail. Others look past you entirely and begin to whisper about the next in line, already shifting their loyalties in anticipation. Your illness is not just a medical event, it is a political earthquake. Every choice, every symptom, every rumor is ammunition in the endless game of survival and succession. Finally, a consensus is reached, which is to say, an uneasy truce among the council members. The treatment will begin. You will be bled again, purged again, anointed thoroughly, and subjected to a variety of inhalations, compresses, and prayers. Someone will read from a book of cures so old the pages crumble as they turn them. Someone else will stand by with a bowl just in case. You are too tired to care. You let them work their medieval magic, half comforted by the knowledge that, whatever the outcome, this council will disband only when your fever does, or you do. This is the medicine of kings, a spectacle of learning, a pageant of certainty, a guessing game played with your life as the stakes. And as you slip back into the hot, restless darkness of fever, you wonder if, in some far off future, medicine might one day be less theatrical and a little more effective. If the Council of Physicians has a favorite remedy, it is bloodletting, a simple, universal answer for nearly every complaint known to medieval humanity. Headaches, fevers, swollen joints, nightmares, unexplained melancholy. The leech or the lancet is always at the ready, as reliable as death itself. You have endured the procedure before, but it never gets easier. There is a ritual to the preparations. The bedclothes are folded back. The table beside your bed is cleared for instruments. A bowl, a cloth, a knife so sharp it glints in the candlelight, and, if you are lucky, a little clean linen for afterwards. The leeches, black, shiny, and sluggish, writhe in their glass jar, awaiting their turn with the same grim patience as the doctors. If you are less lucky, you get the lancet, a slender blade, thoroughly wiped with a damp rag, and as likely to dull as it is to be clean. The physicians approach your bedside with the solemnity of priests at a funeral. They mutter in Latin and debate the virtues of cutting the right arm versus the left. The phase of the moon is considered, as is the day of the week, the last meal you ate, and the relative positions of Mars and Saturn. All of this, you suspect, is a distraction from the simple, grisly truth. Someone is about to put a hole in you and see what flows out. When the time comes, you clench your teeth and turn away, pretending an interest in the tapestry on the far wall, hunting scenes, a fox escaping the hounds. You feel the brief, sharp pain of the blade, and then the slow warmth of blood leaving your body, dripping into the bowl with a soft, regular sound. The physicians lean in, studying the flow as if it holds the answer to your survival, debating its color, its speed, the pattern it makes as it pools. They take enough to leave you dizzy. A good sign, one says, as you sway between consciousness and sleep. The humors will now rebalance. You try to believe it, but you feel weaker, more hollow, as if you are being emptied, not just of illness, but of self. The fever lingers, but now you are cold, your skin clammy, your thoughts drifting in and out of sense. They staunch the wound with rough linen. A poultice of something sharp and pungent is tied around your arm. You are ordered to rest, though rest is impossible with the taste of iron in your mouth and the knowledge that this is only the beginning. No one, least of all the physicians, expects bloodletting to work immediately. It is a process, one that can be repeated as often as your body or your will allows. If you are lucky, they will spare you until tomorrow. Afterwards, there is always a peculiar quiet. The servants creep in to remove the blood, carrying the bowl as though it contains a secret. The room smells of sweat and vinegar. Your mother crosses herself. Your father hovers by the door, eyes hard, jaw clenched, refusing to show fear. The court, meanwhile, is abuzz. Everyone knows the first bloodletting marks the moment when illness is truly serious, when prayers and optimism are replaced by a kind of anxious calculation. You are not spared the company of leeches. On another day, when the fever refuses to break, they are brought out, a jar placed on your bedside, the creatures wriggling in anticipation. The physician selects a likely spot and, with practiced fingers, coaxes the leech onto your skin. You watch, transfixed and repulsed, as it latches on while bloating with your blood. The little doctor, someone jokes, though no one laughs. When the leech is full, it drops off, and another takes its place. Afterwards, you are weak and nauseous, your world shrinking to the four walls of your bedchamber and the endless parade of attendants. Every part of your body aches, every joint protests. The fever is undiminished, but now you lack the strength even to toss and turn. You float in a haze of exhaustion, half dreaming, listening to the voices that come and go at your bedside. The physicians remain cautiously optimistic, cautious because you are still alive, and optimistic because you are now too weak to protest further remedies. They begin to discuss the next steps: purging, perhaps, or another round of hot compresses, or a change in diet, which usually means less food, not more. They argue about which saint's relic should be placed closer to your head and whether the air in your chamber should be sweetened with rosemary or sage. Through it all, you remain strangely detached. Your body has become a battleground, and you are the ground itself, not the soldier. You try to remember what it felt like to be well, to walk in the sun, to taste food without fear. These memories grow fainter as the days slip by, marked only by the rhythm of treatments and the anxious faces around you. Bloodletting is not a cure, it is a performance, a gesture of hope in a world that offers little else. As the physicians pack away their tools and the last drops of your blood are carried from the room, you close your eyes and wonder if, next time, they will take just enough to send you across the threshold from patient to memory. But for now, you remain pale, weak, shivering, but alive. The game continues, and so does the spectacle. As the bloodletting slows to an end and the physicians recede, their jars and blades tucked away with grim satisfaction, another procession takes their place at your bedside. The clergy, priests, monks, canons, and even an itinerant bishop descend upon your chamber as if guided by some holy radar tuned to mortal distress. They come not only with prayers, but with relics, incense, icons, and a deep, profound need to involve themselves in every moment of your suffering. You have always lived with religion. It is the soundtrack of your life. Bells, chants, murmured blessings at dawn and dusk, endless invocations for protection from evil, and, just as importantly, from your own family. But when you are ill, religion ceases to be a routine and becomes a full scale occupation. Your illness transforms from a personal crisis into a public test of faith, a moral riddle for the entire kingdom. Your mother is first to act. She orders the priest to say a private mass in your bedchamber. The room, already humid and thick with the odors of vinegar and fear, fills with the sharper scents of incense and beeswax. The priest wears his finest vestments and processes around your bed, chanting the prayers for the sick in a voice carefully modulated to sound both urgent and hopeful. Your mother kneels, head bowed, her knuckles white. You sense that her faith is as much desperation as devotion, a fragile lifeline in a storm. The prayers grow longer as your fever does not recede. The monks are called from their scriptorium, eyes blinking in the sudden lamplight, to join in the chorus of Latin murmurs. Psalms are sung, sometimes at your head, sometimes at your feet. No one can decide which direction offers better access for divine intervention. The bishop arrives in his heavy, embroidered cope and lays a trembling hand upon your forehead, pronouncing blessings with practiced gravity. Your room fills with sacred objects, relics borrowed from every chapel in the region, bits of bone and splinters of wood, each guaranteed to have healed someone, somewhere at some time. A finger of a saint in a tiny crystal reliquary is placed beneath your pillow. A drop of water from a holy well is dripped onto your lips, making you cough. At one point, a monk produces what he swears is a fragment of the true cross and hangs it above your bed with great ceremony. The servants cross themselves, the physicians hover resentfully at the door, and you lie there, a living altar to all the anxieties of medieval faith. Soon, the prayers are joined by confessions. Your confessor leans close and urges you to examine your soul, to repent of any hidden sin. You do your best. You confess to every real and imagined wrongdoing, impatience, pride, the occasional impure thought that one time you sneaked a second helping of honeyed figs at dinner. Your sins are modest, your contrition sincere, but you sense that even the priest would prefer something juicier, a secret vice, a dramatic revelation, a sin to justify the drama of your illness. You disappoint him, but he absolves you anyway, muttering the words with a weary familiarity. Fasting is prescribed next, though it is not clear if the aim is to heal your soul or simply to reduce the strain on your stomach. Special candles are lit and left to burn day and night. Every few hours, a nun arrives to sprinkle holy water around your bed, careful to avoid the sheets. It leaves marks the laundresses complain about. The clergymen debate which saints should be invoked: Saint Denis for headaches, Saint Roch for plagues, Saint Blaise for sore throats. At one point, a young priest suggests a new saint, just recently canonized, whose specialty is general afflictions. You add him to the list, just in case. It would be amusing If you were not so ill, your bedroom becomes a stage for a pageant of faith. Prayers rise and fall, incense coils and drifts, candles flicker in the draft from the hallway. At night, the monks keep vigil, their chants blending with the creak of the floorboards and the distant cry of an owl outside your window. You drift in and out of fever dreams, unsure whether you are awake or already being ferried across some celestial river. For the clergy, your illness is an opportunity, a chance to demonstrate piety, to be seen at the center of royal suffering, to remind everyone that no amount of earthly power will matter if you do not secure your place in the next world. They are earnest, sometimes officious, often deeply superstitious. Their attention is a double edged sword. You feel at once comforted and suffocated, absolved and accused. After a few days, a new note creeps into their voices, a plea, a bargain. If it be God's will, they murmur, let the prince recover. It is not quite a prayer and not quite a surrender. You begin to sense that even the holiest men do not really know what is coming. They only know how to prepare you for the worst. And so you lie there, swaddled in relics, soaked in holy water, your every breath counted and recorded by a shifting congregation of anxious clergy. You hope, with a desperation only the truly ill can know, that all this ritual will help, or at least distract you long enough for the fever to pass on its own. In the meantime, you are the kingdom's living relic, prayed over, repented, watched. If faith alone could heal, you would be dancing by now. But faith is no more predictable than fever, and so you wait, and the prayers continue, rising up into the rafters, vanishing through the cracks in the stone, perhaps heard, perhaps not. No matter what the chroniclers and poets claim, the king's bed is not a place of rest. It is an island in a storm, a stage for the slow theater of decline. As you lie among the heavy tapestries and mountains of blankets, you begin to understand that the bedchamber, so often the center of royal life, is above all the place where people wait. Sometimes they wait for healing. More often, they wait for death. Your bed itself is a work of art, a massive frame of carved wood, creaking with every shift of your exhausted body. The mattress is stuffed with straw and wool and feathers, all competing for your discomfort. The sheets are changed at best every few weeks, less to keep you clean, more to impress visitors with linen imported from distant cities. There is always a faint, lingering odor of sweat and sickness, masked with rosewater and herbs that only partially succeed in transforming human frailty into something more tolerable. You are swaddled in blankets, tucked in by servants who mutter prayers and superstitions as they go. Sometimes they pile so many covers on you that you can barely move. Other times, they whisk them away at the doctor's order, leaving you shivering in the chill that seeps through the thickest walls. The window is kept shut for fear of evil airs. The fire is stoked, then left to gutter as servants get distracted by more urgent business. The air, heavy with incense and the smoky tang of burning wood, presses on your lungs. Around your bed, the world continues in a subdued frenzy. Attendants shuffle in and out with endless bowls of broth, cups of wine, and sometimes nothing more than another suggestion for your comfort. Courtiers whisper in the far corners, always half watching your chest to see if it rises and falls. A priest dozes in a chair by the door, his head nodding with each slow tick of time. Even your family hovers, a silent chorus of hope and worry, each waiting for a sign of improvement or of the end. The irony is thick. For all the grandeur, your bed is a prison. You are expected to maintain dignity, no groans, no curses, no childish complaints. You are to suffer with the composure of a statue, to embody the ideal of the noble death, whatever your actual feelings. Every gesture is observed, every word repeated and interpreted. If you turn away from the light, a rumor will start that you fear the afterlife. If you ask for water, someone will fret that your soul is already leaving your body. Sometimes, in the hours between night and dawn, you remember what it was to be young, to slip out of bed before sunrise, to run without thought for tomorrow, to wake hungry and expect to satisfy it. Now you lie still, measuring time in the slow creep of candle wax and the growing stiffness of your limbs. You listen to the sounds outside, the shuffle of servants' feet, the whimper of a dog, the church bell tolling another hour of prayer. Visitors come and go, each bringing their own burden. Some arrive with forced cheer, insisting you will soon be on your feet. Others hover anxiously, eyes red rimmed, as if already practicing grief. The most honest simply sit quietly, offering nothing but presence, a rare comfort in a room so heavy with expectation. The rituals of royalty continue even as your strength fades. You are bathed with elaborate care by hands that try to be gentle but cannot disguise their haste. Your hair is brushed, your nightshirt changed, the linens beneath you straightened as if order alone could keep chaos at bay. A court artist may appear to sketch your likeness for posterity, an honor that feels like a rehearsal for the funeral effigy. Every so often, a herald or a messenger enters to deliver news from the outside world, a victory in the field, a riot in the market, the birth of a nephew. These morsels of life beyond the chamber feel distant, unreal. You cling to dignity because it is all you have left. Dignity means saying thank you when you would rather curse, sitting up for visitors when you want only to sleep, pretending an interest in the endless suggestions for new remedies. Dignity means not flinching when the latest medicine burns your throat, not grimacing at the ache in your bones. Dignity in this world is performance, necessary, exhausting, and ultimately for the benefit of others, not yourself. There are moments, rare, quiet, and almost invisible, when you find a certain peace in the ritual. The world narrows to a candle flame, a single face at your bedside, the touch of a cool cloth on your brow. In those moments, the bed is no longer a prison, but a raft floating on the slow river toward whatever comes next. You know that hundreds have lain here before you, kings and queens and children, each leaving something of themselves behind in the silent air. And so you wait, not for the comfort of sleep, but for the next turn in the drama, a new symptom, a new visitor, a new prayer. The king's bed is a waiting room for death, dressed in gold and velvet, haunted by the whispers of the living. You close your eyes and hope, if not for a cure, then at least for the dignity the world demands from its dying kings. Time, once a steady current, now moves in unpredictable tides. Sometimes the hours slip away in a feverish blur. Sometimes they stretch, minute by painful minute, as your symptoms deepen. The fevers that once left you merely exhausted now leave you gasping for air. It is no longer just a battle with discomfort. It is a struggle with your own failing body, a narrowing of the world to the simple mechanics of breathing in and out. The pain is strangely democratic. It ignores your rank, your lineage, your titles. At first, it is only a tautness in your chest, a heaviness that makes every breath a little more work. Then comes the rattling, the dry, tearing cough that scrapes your throat raw and leaves your mouth tasting of blood. Each inhale is an effort, each exhale a minor victory. The physicians gather at your bedside, their whispers more urgent, their faces more grave. They prod and listen, their hands cool and impersonal. They argue in low voices about the color of your lips, the sound of your breathing, the angle of your head on the pillow. One doctor claims your liver is failing, another says it is your lungs. A third mutters about bad blood and shakes his head as if you have personally disappointed him. Every symptom becomes a clue, a point of pride or shame for the one who guessed it first. You try to speak, to ask for water, to reassure your mother, to offer some word of comfort to the priest kneeling by your side, but your voice betrays you. It is thin and reedy, barely audible. When you do manage a few words, they come out in a croak, broken by coughing fits that leave you weak and gasping. You see the worry etched on the faces around you, the way they lean in to catch every syllable, as if each might be your last. In the court, news of your worsening condition moves faster than any runner. Scribes update their ledgers with trembling hands. The court artist, summoned again, hovers uncertainly in the corner, unsure whether to begin another likeness or wait for a posthumous commission. Rival claimants, cousins, uncles, hopefuls, begin to circulate with greater frequency in the corridors, like vultures drawn to a distant scent. You are the center of their world, but only as long as you are here to be the center. The rituals intensify. Priests come and go, their prayers growing longer and more insistent. They anoint your brow with oil, murmur confessions in your ear, and urge you to hold fast to faith, to hope, to life. Each word costs you effort, and you begin to ration your speech, saving it for the moments when it truly matters. A name, a wish, a half finished blessing for the future you are less and less sure you will see. The air in your chamber grows thick, heavy with incense and worry. Windows remain closed as always, for fear of drafts. The fire, which once warmed you, now seems to draw the air from your lungs, making every breath more desperate. You begin to dread the dusk, when shadows lengthen and the world outside your room seems to recede even further away. Your mother sits with you through the night, her eyes hollow with fear and sleeplessness. Your father, stiff with anxiety, rarely speaks except to demand updates from the physicians. Your siblings, if they are allowed in at all, stand at the edge of the room, uncertain whether to pray or to say goodbye. The weight of their hope presses down on you, almost as heavy as the blankets that cover your legs. There are moments in the dead of night when you feel yourself slipping out of the room, out of your body, into a space that is neither pain nor peace, but simply absence. Sometimes you fight your way back, gasping and coughing, driven by a stubbornness that surprises even you. Sometimes you let yourself drift, surrendering to the current that seems to pull you further from the world of the living with every passing breath. The physicians, sensing the gravity of your decline, redouble their efforts. More bloodletting, more potions, more relics laid upon your chest. They debate whether the fever is worse than the cough, whether to focus on your lungs or your blood, whether to hope for a sudden miracle or prepare the last rites. No one asks you what you want. That luxury has long since passed. In the rare quiet moments, you think about your life, not as a collection of titles and victories, but as a series of small, unremarkable moments. A sunny morning in the orchard, a laugh shared with a friend long dead, the scent of rain on stone. These memories are brighter, somehow, than the gold and velvet of your surroundings, more real than the anxious faces at your bedside. You cling to them, even as your breath grows shorter, your words fewer. You begin to understand that dignity, in the end, is not about composure or ceremony, but about facing the inevitable with whatever strength remains. And so you breathe and speak and wait, caught between the world that watches you fade and the silence that draws ever closer. You had always known the palace kitchens to be a world of endless possibility. Roasted meats, rare spices, sweetmeats dusted with sugar from distant lands. But now that you are confined to your bed, the cuisine takes a darker turn. The cups and bowls that arrive at your bedside are no longer filled with comforting broths or mulled wine. Instead, the air fills with a sharp, medicinal funk, a blend of vinegar, musty herbs, and something else you cannot identify. If you thought the bloodletting and leeching were unpleasant, you were simply unprepared for the tortures of royal pharmacology. The first remedy is deceptively mild, a thin, sour broth tinged with wine and a handful of dried flowers. You choke it down, hoping it will pass as quickly as the previous fevers. But then the recipes escalate, as if the physicians are competing to outdo one another in extravagance and offensiveness. A thick, gritty potion appears, flavored with garlic and bitter fennel, tasting as if it had been left to ferment in a stable. You gag, tears streaming from your eyes, as your nurse encourages you with desperate optimism. There are more concoctions, endless, inventive, and always worse than the last. Some are simple, meant to purge your system, a warm sludge of boiled onions and honey, meant to draw the heat downward. Others are cruelly ambitious, a blend of crushed beetles, dried moss, and a dash of sheep urine, forced down with promises that it worked for the King of Navarre. You cannot imagine what illness the King of Navarre survived, but you suspect it was less dreadful than this cure. The doctors rotate through a greatest hits list of medieval medicine. Vinegar mixed with water from the holy well, vine leaves boiled with ashes, powdered stag antler, and, on one memorable afternoon, blood from a freshly slaughtered cockerel, heated and served before it could congeal. It is a parade of horror, a testament to human creativity in the face of ignorance. For every mouthful, there is a new hope whispered by the nurse, a new theory mumbled by the physician. This will expel the evil humors. This will calm the fire in your belly. This is what the ancients prescribed for stubborn fevers. You come to dread the sound of the door. Each arrival brings a new brew, a new flavor, a new insult to your senses. Some taste of the earth, some of mold, some of old coins. Many are so foul that you suspect the kitchen staff may have simply swept the floor and called it medicine. Your mother hovers, urging you to drink, promising that faith and fortitude will see you through. You try to comply, but sometimes the taste alone is enough to make you retch. Your father, ever practical, demands results. He does not care how the medicine tastes, only that you live long enough to inherit his kingdom. The servants, for their part, gossip about each new recipe. Some are convinced that the more revolting the remedy, the more likely it is to work. Others quietly wager on which concoction will finally break your spirit. A few, remembering the old country ways, suggest simpler cures, a poultice of mud, a prayer said backwards at midnight, a quick trip to the barber for yet another bleeding. Anything, it seems, is worth a try. Meanwhile, your body rebels, your stomach churns and cramps. You are alternately parched with thirst and sick with nausea. You dream of water, cool, clean, untouched by human hands or the ambitions of medieval science. You wake to the reality of another foul potion, pressed to your lips by trembling hands. You try to refuse, but resistance is futile. Everyone is determined to save you, even if they must poison you in the process. Not all remedies are for drinking. There are ointments to be smeared on your chest, thick and oily, reeking of tallow and spoiled herbs. There are powders to be inhaled, sending you into fits of coughing that threaten to suffocate you entirely. There are strange objects to be placed under your pillow or sewn into your garments. Dried frogs, carved amulets, tiny bags of graveyard earth. Each is prescribed with grave confidence, as if one more trick might finally tip the scales in your favor. You lose track of time. The cycle of potions, prayers, and nausea becomes your whole existence. You come to envy the peasants in the fields outside your window. Their remedies may be crude, but at least they are voluntary and rarely delivered with quite so much solemn ceremony. You would trade a dozen relics for a single drink of clean, cool water, free from additives, exorcisms, or the ambitions of a half mad physician. Still, you swallow what you are given. You have no choice. The hope of a kingdom rests on every sip, every swallow, every grimace. You are told that suffering is a path to virtue, that endurance is a royal duty, that the best cures are always the most difficult to bear. You try to believe it, but the taste lingers, and you find yourself counting your breaths, wondering which remedy will be the one that finally brings either relief or release. And so the parade of cures continues, strange, inventive, always hopeful, always disgusting. You endure because that is what princes do. Whether you will survive the medicine is, as always, a question for tomorrow. When the fever is at its worst, when the only tastes you know are vinegar and dread, when your mouth aches for water and your skin crawls beneath oily ointments, your mind slips away from the press of sickbed rituals and seeks escape. In the haze of illness, you drift backwards through memory into the earliest, simplest days, before you learned to fear drafts and leeches, before the words, Your Majesty, meant anything more than the distant ring of a bell. You remember with strange clarity the gardens of your childhood, not the manicured plots where nobles stroll for the sake of appearances, but the wild corners, patches of grass grown long and soft, dew sparkled mornings when the air tasted clean, before anyone thought to hover at your shoulder and measure your every breath. You remember running, feeling your heart pound with exertion rather than fever, your lungs full of air sharp with the promise of rain. There is a bittersweet comfort in these memories. You see your younger self, hair tangled, knees mud stained, laughing as you dodge the slow, clumsy hands of a nurse, determined to keep you clean and presentable. The dogs bark, the birds scatter, and for one brief moment, you are just a child, not a prince, not a future king, not the center of a nation's worry. You remember climbing a low wall, the roughness of stone beneath your palms, the secret satisfaction of stolen freedom. You remember, too, the first time you were ill, not gravely, just a sniffle, a cough, enough to keep you indoors while the other children ran outside. Even then, the world of the sick room seemed a prison, a too warm bed, the flicker of candlelight, the dull recitations of tutors who had nowhere else to be. You hated the heavy curtains, the endless fussing, the way the air never seemed to move. Now, years later, you lie under heavier blankets, watched by more anxious faces, but the sensation is the same. The air is stale, the windows shut, the sky a memory. Between bouts of fever, you drift from past to present, lingering on small details that seemed meaningless at the time. The cold shock of bare feet on a stone floor, the tang of apples stolen from the kitchen, the comfort of a friendly voice in the corridor outside your room. Sometimes you remember dreams, wild, formless things, half forgotten by morning, but rich with the impossible logic of childhood. You wish you could dream now, but your sleep is shallow, broken by pain, the clatter of cups, the ceaseless coming and going of worried people. You remember faces, friends who vanished long ago, siblings taken by the same fevers that now threaten you, a nurse with strong arms and a patient voice. You remember how much smaller the world felt then, and how, somehow, that smallness brought safety. You recall the feeling of sunlight on your skin, the sensation of grass beneath your hands, the scent of crushed mint and wild thyme. Even now, these memories cut through the stink of medicine and incense, offering a glimpse of something better. Sometimes, when the pain lessens and your mind clears, you wonder how different things might have been. What if you had been born a peasant, free to live and die in the open air, untroubled by courtly intrigue and the endless expectations of blood and name? What if you had chosen another life, a monk, a knight, a merchant on some dusty road? The possibilities swirl and vanish, replaced by the iron certainty of your present. A bed, a fever, a room full of anxious prayers. You wonder, too, about your own decisions. Could you have been kinder, braver, wiser? Could you have laughed more, complained less, said yes to adventure and no to duty? These questions haunt the long hours of night when the candles burn low and the only sounds are your own labored breaths. Regret, you discover, is another kind of fever, a slow burning that leaves you restless and unsatisfied. Yet, even as you dwell on these thoughts, you cling to hope. Hope that somehow this night will pass, that the air will shift, that someone will open the window and let in the scent of rain. You tell yourself stories of recovery, of miraculous returns to health, of mornings spent beneath the open sky. You imagine the first breath of cold, clean air on your tongue, the first steps outside, the sudden relief of light and space. Reality intrudes. Another dose of foul medicine, another round of prayers, another lecture from the physician about the importance of patience and faith. But you retreat again and again into memory, the sunlit gardens, the laughter, the simple joy of being alive and unobserved. These are your secret treasures, your talismans against despair. You hold them close, knowing they are the last things illness can never take from you. And so you drift, suspended between the world of memory and the press of the sick room. The longing for fresh air, simple, ordinary, taken for granted by the healthy, becomes your dearest wish. The hope that, if nothing else, your last breath might taste not of incense and dust, but of wind and earth and sky. You have become the axis around which the court spins, a pale, sweating axis, unmoving in your great bed, but nonetheless the center of everything. Your every groan summons another whisper, another rush of servants, another anxious message sent through the corridors. The court, once a stage for politics, now resembles a house of endless debate. Should they continue the treatments, or finally let you rest. The great men and women of your household, those who once prided themselves on composure, are losing their certainty. Their advice, always in ample supply, now comes with an undercurrent of doubt, as if even they are exhausted by the performance. Some urge more action, others counsel retreat. The only thing they agree upon is that whatever happens, no one should ever admit ignorance. There are those, particularly among the younger courtiers, who believe in the promise of progress. They suggest you try new remedies, powders from Spain, potions from distant Italy, a new type of leech said to work wonders in Aragon. Their faith in novelty is touching, if misplaced. Each new treatment is greeted with a hopeful flutter, followed by a disappointed silence when it fails to conjure a miracle. Your body, battered and weary, becomes the canvas for their medical optimism. Then there are the veterans of the court, those who have watched kings and princes come and go, who have seen more deaths than coronations. They argue for restraint, gently, but with the weight of experience. Perhaps, they murmur, it is time to cease the endless parade of physicians. Let nature take its course, they say. Pray, confess, make your peace, and trust in God's mercy. Their words are delivered in hushed voices, away from the ears of your family, as if speaking them too loudly might seal your fate. Some suggest compromise, as courtiers always do. Why not both? Continue the treatments, but add more prayers. Let the doctors ply their craft, but keep the priests nearby, ready to administer last rites at a moment's notice. This is the safest advice. No one can be accused of negligence, and everyone can claim they did their best. In a world where no one is sure what works, doing everything and nothing all at once is the only reliable policy. The debates swirl around you. You catch fragments as they drift through your chamber. He must fight on, says one, for the sake of the kingdom. He is suffering needlessly, sighs another, her voice trembling with genuine pity. His mother will never forgive us if we stop. His father will never forgive us if we fail. Each argument is part concern, part self preservation, and part calculation. Your fate is tangled with their fortunes. No one can afford to be wholly honest. You, meanwhile, are granted little say in the matter. Your body is the subject of debate, but your will is not invited to the council. If you express a wish for rest, it is met with soothing platitudes. Of course, Your Majesty, but just a little more medicine, just a few more prayers. If you ask for more treatment, the physicians glow with purpose. The priests whisper about faith, and the courtiers nod with relief. Your desires are heard, but not heeded, recorded for the sake of the record, not for guidance. You realize in these moments that you have become an abstraction, a vessel for hope, for anxiety, for the stubborn belief that kings do not die like ordinary men. No one wants to bear the blame for your passing. No one wants to admit defeat in the face of sickness. And so, they delay the inevitable, offering advice not so much to help you, but to help themselves cope with your decline. It is a theater of indecision. The courtiers argue with each other, with the physicians, with the priests, and with themselves. The only thing that remains untouched by debate is the slow, steady progress of your illness. Each opui day brings new symptoms, new rounds of treatment, new rituals to stave off the truth. Your world shrinks to the boundaries of your bed, your body, your breath. Sometimes, in the silence between consultations, you find yourself wishing for resolution, one way or another. The constant interventions, the noise, the taste of strange medicines, the press of hopeful faces, all of it has become as wearying as the illness itself. You long for peace, even as those around you fear it. You sense, too, the shifting of alliances. Some courtiers already look past you, their eyes calculating the balance of power that will follow your departure. Others redouble their attentions, hoping to be remembered for loyalty, for service, for a final act of devotion. It is a strange, lonely spectacle. Your dying becomes a public event, a test of character for everyone but yourself. And so the court continues to debate, to hope, to fear, to treat, and to pray. Your body is both battlefield and an altar, a place where faith and science, compassion and ambition all collide. The final decision, treat or surrender, fight or release, remains suspended, as uncertain as your breath, as fragile as the candle's flame. In the end, it is not advice or treatment that decides your fate, but the quiet, patient work of time and nature. You wait, surrounded by people who can do everything but let you go. There is a peculiar quiet that settles in the last hours. Not the silence of peace, but a tense hush, broken by murmurs and the subtle shuffle of anxious feet outside your door. Time contracts. Every minute feels weighted, elongated by uncertainty. You are no longer the patient, the future, the king in waiting. You are the threshold, and on the other side, a kingdom waits to see which way you will tip the balance. From your bed, you catch the soundscape of death, the muffled conversations through thick wooden doors, the soft weeping of servants who have seen too many royal deaths, the measured tones of courtiers exchanging news like coin. Some speak in hopeful platitudes. He seemed a little better this morning. Others are more pragmatic. If it is to happen, it will be tonight. You realize, with a wry clarity, that you have become less a person and more a news item to be updated and passed along. Closer to your bed, the world narrows. Your mother's voice, breaking and soft, offers the familiar prayers she once recited when you were small and frightened of the dark. Your father, determined to keep his dignity to the last, gives instructions in a voice barely above a whisper, arrangements for succession, reminders to trusted advisors, thinly veiled threats to those he suspects might be tempted by chaos. Your siblings, half seen shadows on the edge of your vision, are kept at a respectful distance, as if to avoid catching whatever it is that pulls you so relentlessly toward the end. Every so often, the door creaks open. A physician enters, his face a mask of professional concern, hoping for one last moment of medical heroism. He checks your pulse, your breath, your eyes, and then vanishes, leaving behind nothing but the scent of his tinctures and the heaviness of unspoken words. After him comes a priest, murmuring the last rites, his hand gentle on your brow, his voice practiced in the delicate art of guiding souls toward their next destination. You are not sure what comfort this brings, but it is at least something familiar, a ritual in a world now stripped of certainty. Outside your chamber, the palace is alive with anticipation. Courtiers linger in the corridors, debating who should be summoned first when the inevitable comes. Some wager quietly on the hour of your passing. Others whisper prayers, whether out of true concern or careful calculation for appearances. It is impossible to say. The future of the kingdom hangs in the air, fragile as the flame of the last candle by your bed. You drift in and out of consciousness. Sometimes you are certain you are alone, suspended in the stillness of your own thoughts. At other times, the voices at the door pull you back. A phrase about succession, the urgent whisper of a message being relayed, the scrape of armor as a new guard takes his post. You realize, dimly, that the machinery of power never stops, not even at the threshold of death. The air in your chamber grows thick. Incense mingles with the scent of sweat and old linen. Your mouth is dry, your body distant, and even pain feels muted, as if you are being gently pulled away from it. The world shrinks to small details. The flicker of candlelight on carved wood, the scratch of a quill as the chronicler updates the record, the cool touch of a hand, yours or another's, resting briefly on your brow. Sometimes you hear laughter, quickly hushed from somewhere beyond your door. Life goes on, you realize, even as yours is ebbing. There are meals to prepare, horses to be fed, children to soothe, plans to be made for a world that will soon move forward without you. You are no longer a part of these plans, but you listen all the same, as if you might catch some final piece of wisdom before you go. The great men and women of the court come one by one to pay their respects, not always in person, but in the form of messages, tokens, or whispered assurances passed through the ever present chain of attendants. Some come out of genuine grief, some out of obligation, some out of ambition. You recognize all three, and you are too tired to judge them. Your last hours are both crowded and lonely, a paradox that feels entirely fitting. The kingdom waits, your family waits, the future waits. You listen to the voices outside your door and wonder what stories will be told of this night when the world stood still for your passing. As you drift again into half sleep, you realize that the court outside will always talk, always plan, always look to the next day. You, meanwhile, will soon slip into a silence where even the loudest voices cannot follow. You always imagined, when you allowed yourself to think of such things, that the end of a royal life would come with thunder, with drama, a final speech, perhaps, or a blaze of trumpets, as your soul was escorted from this world by saints and ancestors. Instead, the reality is neither heroic nor tragic. It is quietly anticlimactic, a gradual slipping away, hardly noticeable to anyone but yourself. The chamber is as crowded as ever, filled with a rotating cast of physicians, priests, anxious family, and the ever watchful court. You are the focus of all eyes, but their attention is already tinged with distraction, as if they are waiting for the next act to begin. The prayers have become routine, the remedies half hearted, the hopes thin and stretched. The world narrows to the slow tick of time and the soft rattle of your own breath. Your body, once so insistent in its suffering, now feels far away. Your limbs numb, your chest heavy, each breath a small labor. The pain that consumed you for so long has faded, replaced by a growing sense of emptiness, as if you are gently evaporating. You are aware, in some distant way, of hands on your forehead, of voices reciting prayers, of the cool touch of a damp cloth on your lips. These gestures, meant to comfort, barely reach you now. The world is receding. You try to speak one last time, to offer some words to your mother, your father, to the kingdom that has pressed so heavily upon you since the day you were born. But your voice fails. What emerges is a whisper, lost amid the shuffle of feet and the rustle of robes. You see tears on your mother's cheeks, the tight set of your father's jaw, the haunted looks exchanged by your siblings. There is nothing left to say, and no strength to say it. The priest leans close, murmuring the final rites, his words a gentle drone that blends with the sounds of the room. Someone places a relic on your chest. Another presses your hand with trembling fingers. For all the rituals, all the planning, there is no great crescendo. There is only a long exhalation, a fading of the world's colors and sounds, a gentle loosening of your hold on everything that once seemed so urgent. Outside your door, life continues. Courtiers murmur, servants prepare for whatever comes next, guards shift in the hallway. You are, in these final seconds, both the center of the world and already forgotten. The court has seen this scene before. It will see it again. The kingdom is a living creature, always hungry, always impatient for the next moment, the next ruler, the next hope. You notice, almost with surprise, that you are no longer afraid. The dread that haunted you in childhood, the terror that lingered at the edge of every illness, every rumor, every shadow, now it is gone. In its place, a strange calm, as if the world itself is exhaling alongside you. The struggle is over, not with a scream, but with a sigh. In your final moment, you realize that you do not leave the world with a legacy of grand gestures or final proclamations. There is no audience to cheer, no chronicler to record your last words. Instead, there is a hush, a pause in the endless noise, as if the world is holding its breath just for you. The candle on your bedside flickers, sputters, and dies. You feel yourself floating, lighter than air, untethered from pain, from duty, from expectation. The faces around you blur and fade. The world slips away, gentle as sleep, silent as snowfall. And then nothing. No trumpets, no angels, no grand revelations, only stillness. Your story, like so many before, ends not with thunder, but with the softest whisper. Outside, as news quietly spreads, the machinery of the kingdom begins to move again. The world, always waiting, turns toward the next day, the next king, the next story. You are gone, and the only drama is that there was none at all. There is a moment of stillness after your final breath, a pause in which no one is quite sure what to do. The priest completes the last of his prayers. The physicians quietly pack away their tools, and your family weeps. Genuine tears, yes, but also tears shaped by relief, exhaustion, and the knowledge that the next chapter of royal history is already beginning. In the very next breath, the machinery of ceremony whirs to life. Death is not a private matter in a royal palace. Your chamber, once a fortress of sick-room secrecy, is swiftly transformed into a place of public spectacle. The door is thrown wide. Courtiers, clergy, and servants all have their roles to play in the pageant of mourning. For you, privacy is now as impossible as recovery. The first order of business is to prepare your body for the funeral, and here the peculiar priorities of your age become clear. The court cares deeply about how you are dressed, how you will be seen, how your memory will be preserved in the eyes of God and history. It cares very little about hygiene. Your body, still warm with the last embers of life, is stripped of its sweat-soaked nightshirt. The process is brisk and practical. The servants have done this before. There is little sentiment. They handle you with the same practiced efficiency they use to dress and undress you in life. Only now, there is no need to worry about your dignity or comfort. That is left to the ceremony. The next step is to wash your body. Wash is an optimistic word. A damp cloth, perfumed with rose water and vinegar, is passed over your limbs. The goal is less cleanliness than fragrance, a vain effort to cover the odors already beginning to rise from beneath your skin. The windows stay shut, as always, for fear of drafts and evil spirits, and the air grows thick with a mixture of incense and decay. Your hair is combed, your face smoothed of expression, your hands folded on your chest. The best linens are brought out, embroidered with gold, stiff with starch, and the memory of past funerals. You are dressed in your finest robe, heavy with velvet and fur, the fabric pressed close to your cooling skin. Jewels are arranged on your chest and around your neck. The weight is substantial, but no one asks if you are comfortable. You are to be seen and remembered, not coddled. As the hours pass, the natural process of decomposition begins to assert itself, indifferent to rank or ceremony. Servants light extra candles and place bundles of herbs at your head and feet. Some mutter prayers, others whisper complaints about the difficulty of keeping the air bearable. No one dares to open a window. The fear of letting in bad spirits is greater than the fear of disease, though both, in their own way, are ever present. The procession of mourners starts almost immediately. The great and the good file through your chamber, heads bowed, eyes carefully averted from the more obvious signs of mortality. They whisper platitudes to your family, cross themselves before your remains, and make mental notes about who is in attendance and who is absent. The mourning is a performance as elaborate as the coronation, with just as many politics simmering beneath the surface. All the while, the chroniclers hover, taking notes for the record. They write of your noble passing, your regal composure, the solemn dignity of your body lying in state. They do not mention the reality, the struggle to keep the stench at bay, the discreet applications of extra perfume, the constant vigilance for any sign that the ritual might be interrupted by something as mundane as a burst of decay. In the midst of the ceremony, relics are produced and pressed to your body, tokens of saints, splinters of the true cross, bits of bone said to work miracles. These are as much for the living as for the dead, reminders that faith and superstition must march in step with grief. The clergy offer more prayers, and incense thickens the air until it is almost impossible to breathe, as if everyone is trying to mask not only your passing, but the very fact of death itself. Your body is eventually placed in a coffin, carved, gilded, heavy enough to demand a dozen strong backs. The lid is closed, the seals applied, and you are carried out to the great chapel. The kingdom mourns, and the rituals go on. Few, if any, reflect on the lack of true cleanliness. Fewer still consider the risks they carry with them, the germs passed from one mourner to another. Death is a mystery, but hygiene is an even greater one. For a little while, you are the focus of all eyes, a figure draped in finery, surrounded by sorrow and ceremony. Then, as always, the world moves on. The last candle gutters, the last prayer fades, and you are left to the silence of the tomb, dressed not for comfort nor for eternity, but for a single fleeting moment of royal display. Your passing, as with all royal deaths, does not end with silence. It begins a new cycle of stories, official and unofficial, sacred and profane, each layered on top of your actual life, until memory itself becomes a kind of elaborate burial shroud. Chroniclers get to work, quills scratching into parchment, searching for meaning in your suffering. They write of a valiant struggle, of prayers answered and unanswered, of a kingdom united in grief. Every detail is edited for posterity, the right gestures emphasized, the undignified forgotten, your last words polished or invented outright. The true story, of course, is far less poetic. The court will remember the anxiety, the shifting alliances, the parade of well-meaning but clueless physicians. The staff will remember the odor, the endless cleaning that never quite conquered the air, and the headaches from too much incense. The peasants, far from the palace, will remember the days of rumor and uncertainty, and perhaps, in their own way, the brief comfort that even kings must die as messily as anyone else. Your death becomes a lesson, though no one agrees on what it teaches. For some, it is a warning about pride, or a call for deeper faith, or proof of the mysterious workings of fate. For the chroniclers, it is a chance to reflect on the cruelty of time, the fallibility of medicine, and the fleeting nature of earthly power. They write solemn lines about the tragedy of lost potential, about the torch passing to the next generation, about the need for humility before God and destiny. Yet in all their writings, little attention is paid to the real causes of your end. The fever is called divine will, the weakness a trial sent by providence. The word infection is never used. The idea that hands should be washed, that water could be clean, that illness might travel in unseen ways from person to person, these are notions still centuries away. Medicine continues its dance of leeches and relics, its faith in humors and hope in miracles. Sanitation is, at best, a concern for the servants and the poor. The royals remain swaddled in ritual and ignorance, wrapped in cloth and prayers, marching bravely into the next epidemic. Your legacy, as the years pass, is shaped by what people need from you. For some, you are a tragic figure undone by fate. For others, a symbol of royal vulnerability, a reminder that even the highest are not spared the indignities of disease. For the court, you are a warning. Be careful whom you trust, and always be seen to be doing something, even when nothing works. For the next generation of physicians, you are another entry in the ledger of noble patients lost to mysterious causes. Your death does not change the world. The rituals continue, unaltered. The next king inherits your crown and your problems. The court resumes its usual business: alliances, banquets, gossip, the slow, relentless advance of decay and ambition. The same fevers come and go. The same debates swirl through the corridors. Each new illness brings new remedies, new prayers, new rounds of hopeful ignorance. But outside the palace, the world is changing, though no one in your court will notice for centuries. Little by little, peasants and townsfolk learn small lessons: that fresh water tastes better, that clean hands are lucky, that the open air is healthier than the stifling dark. Their discoveries travel slowly, whispered from one mother to another, passed along by traveling monks and skeptical midwives. Eventually, someone will make the connection. Disease can be prevented, not just endured. By then, your name will be just another in a long line of royal dead, remembered for a while, then forgotten. Your tomb will stand, cold and impressive, visited by the curious and the devout, its true lessons lost beneath layers of carved stone and careful words. Perhaps someday, a scholar will puzzle over the records and wonder why so many died so young, why even kings faded away in rooms thick with incense and dread. The answer will be simple: they did not know what they did not know. And so you rest, no longer prince, nor king, nor patient, but a chapter in a book that is, at its heart, a long, dull warning about the cost of ignorance. The kingdom moves on, the world turns, and history, as always, is less about the past than about what people need to believe. Your death, like your life, is a lesson waiting for a world ready to learn. But for now, the window remains shut, the prayers continue, and the shadows gather. The story ends not with a revolution, but with another quiet, preventable death, another chance, not yet taken, to open the air and let in the light.